Now, if you open up to page 41, we are going to go over methods for solving quadratic equations, because we have now learned quite a few different ways to solve a quadratic equation. So, the first that we learned is factoring, and we use this when a quadratic equation can be factored easily. Okay? The next method is to graph. And now, graphing is really just to give us approximate solutions, because graphing is not that fun. It's also not that accurate. So if you're just looking for approximate answers and you happen to like graphing, that is a method. Now, finding the square roots, you can do that, but only when it's in the form of x squared equals d, or in other words, b equals 0. And completing the square, it's best when a equals 1 and b is an even number. Because when a isn't 1, you have to divide the whole equation to get a equal to 1. And when b is not an even number, when you divide it by 2, it gives you fractions and it's not friendly. But you can use a quadratic formula for any quadratic equation, okay? So, for example, my son, he just likes using the quadratic formula. He programs his calculator, and even if he has to unprogram it for a test, he just reprograms it, and he finds that the easiest method. So it's really personal choice. I personally like to factor if it's factorable, and I use the quadratic equation as a last resort. Now, let's look at these two examples. A says 6x squared minus 11x plus 7 equals 0. Okay? So, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 42 but add up to negative 11. So, I don't think I can easily come up with any magic numbers, so it's not going to be factored easily. And I wouldn't want to complete the square because a is not 1 and b is not even. So, the quadratic equation cannot be factored easily, and completing the square would result in many fractions. So the equation can be solved using the quadratic formula. Now, for the next one, 4x squared minus 36 equals 0. Well, first of all, that one, there's no b term, so I'm definitely going to solve this by using the square roots. Okay? Now, let's look at example 3. First thing I'm going to do to solve this is to say x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals 0. Now, can I think of two numbers that multiply to negative 9 and add up to 8, positive 8? Well, I could use a positive 9 and a negative 1. So let's try factoring this. So x plus 9 times x minus 1 equals 0. Let's make sure it works. X squared minus x plus 9x is plus 8x minus 9. So these answers would be negative 9 and 1. Now, just for fun, let's do it again using the quadratic formula. So I would say x equals negative b, negative 8, plus or minus the square root. B squared is 64 minus 4 times 1 times negative 9, all over 2. So this becomes negative 8 plus or minus the square root. 64 plus 36 is 100, all over 2. So it becomes negative 8 plus 10 over 2, negative 8 minus 10 over 2. This becomes 2 over 2, which is 1. This becomes negative 18 over 2, which is negative 9. So first I did it by factoring, got negative 9 and 1. Then I did it by using the quadratic formula, I get negative 9 and 1. As long as you get the right answer, whatever method works is fine.